Most people think bad investment decisions come from bad advice, wrong stock picks, bad timing, market crashes. But the worst investment decisions people make in their 20s and 30s have almost nothing to do with the market. They're about how people use their money, time, and attention during the most important decades of their financial lives. Because your 20s and 30s are not primarily about perfection, they're about direction. They're the decades where small choices quietly compound into massive outcomes. And that works both ways. Small decisions made early can compound into freedom, and small mistakes repeated long enough can compound into stress, regret, and a life that feels financially stuck. The reason these decades matter so much is simple. Time is the most powerful multiplier in finance. You can recover from a bad year. You can recover from a wrong purchase. You can even recover from a market crash. But you can't recover lost compounding years. If money has no time to grow, it has to be replaced with effort. And effort is always harder. So when we talk about the worst investment decisions in your 20s and 30s, we're not talking about one dramatic mistake. We're talking about patterns, quiet habits, comfortable choices, decisions that feel harmless today but become expensive over decades. The first and most common mistake is waiting to get serious about investing. People say, "I'll start later, when I earn more, when life is more stable." And it sounds responsible because nobody wants to invest when they feel uncertain. But stability doesn't arrive on schedule. Responsibilities grow, expenses rise, time shrinks, life gets louder, not quieter. And the biggest cost of waiting is not lost money, it's lost time. Because investing rewards time more than it rewards intensity. A small habit started early often beats a big push started late, not because the later person is lazy, but because compounding doesn't care about intentions, it only cares about years. The second mistake is keeping too much money in cash for too long. Cash feels safe, it doesn't move, it doesn't scare you, it doesn't fluctuate, it lets you sleep at night, but over long periods, cash quietly loses value. Inflation erodes it, opportunity passes it by. And in your prime wealth building years, holding excessive cash is often a decision driven by fear, not strategy. Yes, you need an emergency fund. Yes, you need stability. But beyond that, keeping large amounts idle can become a silent financial leak. You don't see it draining, but it's draining anyway. The third mistake is confusing consumption with investment. People love calling things investments. Cars, luxury items, lifestyle upgrades, expensive clothes, the latest tech, a nicer apartment than they need, a membership they barely use. But most of these are not investments. They don't generate income. They don't grow. They don't compound. They just feel good. Briefly, and the danger is that consumption in your 20s and 30s doesn't just cost money, it costs momentum, because the dollars you spend today are dollars that can't work for you tomorrow, and the earlier you spend them, the more future value you erase. The fourth mistake is investing without understanding behavior. Most people focus entirely on what to invest in. Very few think about how they will behave when things get uncomfortable. They don't plan for fear. They don't plan for boredom. They don't plan for temptation. They don't plan for headlines, market drops, or the emotional chaos that comes with watching money fluctuate. So when emotions hit, plans collapse. It's not the asset that fails, it's the investor. Without a behavioral plan, every market dip feels like an emergency, and every market rally feels like an invitation to chase. The fifth mistake is overestimating short-term ability. In your 20s and 30s, confidence is high, which is not always bad, but it can be expensive. People believe, "I'll figure it out. I'll adjust. I'll just work harder if something goes wrong." But markets don't reward hustle, they reward patience. Overconfidence leads to overtrading, chasing trends, unnecessary risk, and the belief that you can outsmart systems that punish impatience. The market is not impressed by your effort. It is indifferent. It responds to time, discipline, and probabilities. The sixth mistake is ignoring opportunity cost. Every dollar does something. It either grows, sits idle, or disappears into consumption. Choosing one option means rejecting the others. Most people never stop to ask, what could this money have become? And the truth is, the cost of a purchase isn't the price tag. It's the future value of what you could have built instead. In your 20s and 30s, this becomes massive because money invested early has the longest runway to compound. The seventh mistake is letting lifestyle inflate faster than assets. As income rises, lifestyle follows. Better apartment, better car, better habits, better restaurants, better vacations, better everything. If assets don't grow faster than lifestyle, wealth never forms. And this mistake doesn't feel like a mistake, it feels like success. That's why it's so dangerous. You can earn more and still stay broke if your spending grows at the same speed as your income. You don't get wealthy by earning more. You get wealthy by keeping the gap between what you earn and what you spend, and then putting that gap to work. The eighth mistake is thinking income alone will fix everything. High income helps, but income without systems creates fragile finances. When income stops, everything stops, and life eventually forces pauses. Layoffs, burnout, illness, family responsibilities, career changes. Assets are what create resilience. Assets are what keep working when you can't. If all your financial strength depends on you showing up every day, it's not strength, it's dependence. The ninth mistake is trying to be smart instead of consistent. People chase complexity, advanced strategies, hot tips, predictions, perfect timing, the next big thing. They believe smart moves matter more than steady ones, but consistency beats brilliance over time. Repeating simple, disciplined decisions for years usually outperforms scattered, intelligent moves driven by excitement. The market rewards boring behaviors, regular contributions, long holding periods, low costs, and emotional control. The 10th mistake is not defining a personal strategy. Many people invest randomly, a little here, a little there. No clear plan, no purpose, no timeline. Without a strategy, every market move feels like a crisis. Every decision becomes emotional because nothing is anchored. A strategy isn't just about returns, it's about stability. It gives you rules you can follow when your feelings are loud. It turns chaos into something manageable. And without it, people end up reacting, not investing. The 11th mistake is learning too late. People often learn after mistakes hurt, after losses, after regret, after missed opportunities. But education delayed is opportunity denied. Learning early isn't about avoiding mistakes entirely. Everyone makes mistakes. Learning early is about making smaller mistakes, faster and in safer amounts. It's about building familiarity so the market stops feeling like a monster and starts feeling like a system. The 12th mistake is letting fear dictate decisions. Fear shows up in many forms: staying in cash too long, selling too early, avoiding markets entirely, refusing to start because it feels overwhelming. Fear doesn't feel reckless, it feels responsible. That's why it's dangerous. It wraps itself in maturity. I'm being careful. But careful is not the same as stagnant. Avoiding volatility can mean avoiding growth, and avoiding growth for years is one of the most expensive financial decisions a person can make. The 13th mistake is ignoring the power of boring decisions. The best financial decisions are boring. They don't feel impressive, they don't create stories, they don't give you adrenaline, but they quietly build outcomes. People avoid boring and pay for excitement. They chase what feels meaningful in the moment, the purchase, the trend, the status upgrade, and sacrifice what would have been meaningful later: compounding, freedom, and options. The 14th mistake is believing there's plenty of time. Time feels infinite in your 20s and comfortable in your 30s, until suddenly it isn't. The compounding window closes faster than people expect because life speeds up. You blink and a decade goes by. And urgency often arrives too late, when the math becomes harder, when responsibilities are heavier, when catching up requires far more effort than starting earlier would have required. And if you look at all these mistakes, there's a pattern behind them. Every one of them is a trade. Short-term comfort is chosen over long-term leverage. Emotion over structure, feeling over system. The worst financial mistakes rarely feel like mistakes in the moment. They feel normal, they feel deserved, they feel safe, they feel like living life. And that's why they're so powerful, because they don't create immediate pain. They create delayed consequences. So what actually works instead? People who build wealth early don't avoid mistakes. They build behaviors that reduce the damage of mistakes. They start early, they stay consistent, they keep it simple. They let time work. They focus on behavior first and assets second, because assets are only as powerful as the habits that keep you invested in them. Here's a reframe that changes everything. Instead of asking, is this a good investment? Ask, does this decision help future me or only current me? That question filters almost everything: your spending, your saving, your investing, your habits, your patience. Future you is either being built or being robbed, and most people don't notice it happening because it happens quietly. Final thought: your 20s and 30s are not about perfection. They're about alignment, aligning money with time, aligning behavior with goals, aligning decisions with long-term reality. The worst investment decisions aren't dramatic. They're quiet, comfortable, and repeated. And the best ones aren't flashy either. They're boring, consistent, and powerful. And they quietly build the kind of life most people think only luck can create.